Hello, everybody. Well, I thought I'd start today by introducing myself, something which I refrained from doing last time. My name is Hermien, and I want to talk to you today about sketching with the humble ballpoint pen. And the reason I want to choose the humble ballpoint pen is because this makes it a lot easier for people to start. They don't have to go out and look for complicated equipment or look for special pencils or anything in that regard. You only need a ballpoint pen to start making meaningful sketches. Now, I am not doing this in isolation, and I thought I'd explain a little bit about that today. The idea is not just to show you how to draw anything from a stick to a tree to whatever else you would like in a ballpoint pen. The idea is to help you get to a point where you can make visible the invisible and where you can show something about your inner world to the outside world. I myself, if you go look on my Instagram page or my Facebook page, I draw what I would like to refer to as mindscapes. I would have liked to have claimed that that is my invention. It sadly is not. Mindscapes is a word used by many other people. But the point that I'm trying to make is I end up with drawings that look something along this line. I do many different kinds, but this is one of the works that I've finished and that I will still post soon. And the intent with these sessions is that I want to get you step by step to a place where you can make your own mindscapes and where you can make your own creations that are not only wonderfully relaxing, huge fun to make, a new skill to learn, but also truly healing. And it cannot be underestimated. It really cannot. It really is. And don't worry, you don't have to be broken to do this. We all, every now and then, need a little bit of healing. Nowadays, in the time of COVID, we need a lot of that. So there's a path that I am taking with this, and I am basically showing you pen today. I showed you pencil the other day. I want to show you the extreme basics about color and so on, and then I will start going into topics, how you choose the subject matter that speaks to you, and then eventually we will end up with how do you get to a point where you draw intuitively that which is your inner world. One other thing I just like to say before I start is you're going to see me draw a lot of trees. Now, I draw a lot of trees because I love trees and because a lot of my sketching is about trees and has been about them through the years. It's not what you have to do, just so that you know, and it's not all I do. Just to give you an idea, this, for instance, is what I refer to as my young monk that I sketched some years ago. So I also do faces on occasion, although not often enough. I'd like to do that more often. I went through a bird phase. Most of that was in pencil, but the point is, you can sketch absolutely anything you want. You're going to see trees from me, but that does not mean that is what you need to sketch. Now, also, we're going to draw in a very controlled environment today. There's natural light coming through the window, sure, but there's artificial light. I'm just gonna show you the very basics with regards to a little stick. When you go and draw, should you draw outside, for instance, anything about nature, you're gonna find it changing a lot. Should you draw faces, say for instance, you're gonna find people moving around a lot. And I don't want to set you up to be disappointed. The drawings do not look the same in an environment as controlled as this versus an environment that is not. So I want to show you, just so that you don't discard your first drawing because you think it's terrible and therefore you cannot draw, or whatever else you might tell yourself, which is really unnecessary because we all can draw. I just want to show you every piece is not a masterpiece. This was a drawing I made of a tree that was by this side of the road, and I sketched it extremely fast because the sun was moving, or I had an appointment, I can't remember. But it can be as simple as this. It does not have to be the drawing I showed you. It does not have to be, let me show you another one, this kind of drawing, which is a lot more involved than this specific work. I can tell you it took me roughly 2 days, full 2 days to draw. It's they're not all going to look like that. This, for instance, was a tree trunk that I sketched one day as I was sitting in my car, and also I didn't have a lot of time, so there's not a lot of nuance or necessarily sensitivity in there, but I wanted to get it down because I thought it was a beautiful trunk. And even more hastily done, this is just trees emerging from brushes that I sketched extremely quickly one morning when it was also really cold, and I did not want to spend too much time sitting there doing it. So they're gonna look different depending on your experience level, and they're gonna look different depending on your specific circumstances in which you are drawing it. I wanted to get that out there so that you can understand that, because I do find that a lot of people look at a drawing made by somebody who has drawn a long time and say, I can't do that, and then they just give up. Please don't give up. This is honestly one of the best ways to spend your time. All right, let's talk about the sketching itself. This is a little book. It's just a little notebook, the same as the earlier one I showed you. I always have a little sketchbook handy where I sketch whenever I have the time. And this is a little sketch I did when I did the first take of this session, which I will not post. I seem to always make at least two takes before I'm happy. But it gives me a good opportunity to talk to you about texture. You can draw on any paper. I mean, that's the beauty about a ballpoint pen, right? You can draw on any paper you find. However, texture does make a big difference. And you don't have to go out and spend money to get textured paper, by the way. I took, just before I started, I took plain printing paper and I crumpled it. And we can crumple it. You can crumple it a few times. I crumpled it about 3 times, really tightly in my hand. And got my own textured paper. And if you play on textured paper, it gives you a totally different effect than drawing on smooth paper. So if you're starting to draw, you can play with that too. That also makes a big difference. I find textured paper sometimes loosens people up because you cannot draw as detailed as you would on this. And if you use textured paper that you find in the stores, even more so. But this is just to show you don't need to have fancy textured paper. You can create your own textured paper. Actually, I want to crumple this a little bit more just to get it a little bit more evenly. Because, given that this is take 2, we're going to do this on textured paper so that you can see. Alright, so this is the paper we're going to draw on today. Just for fun. I'm just choosing a little simple stick because these sessions aren't long. And we won't finish a stick anyhow. So I thought, why not? And I love drawing sticks. There's a world to see in one. Alright. I want to start with holding the pen, and if you watched the previous video on how to hold a pencil, you will remember I spoke to people about that as well. About the fact that when I sketch in pencil, I do not hold my pencil in a pincer grip like when I'm writing. The reason I don't hold it in that kind of a pincer grip is because it tightens you up. It tightens you up and it limits your range of motion to more or less that. Whereas if you hold it like you would draw with your finger, your range of motion is about as big as your arm can reach, which is fantastic and loosens you up. And I did get feedback that I really appreciated after the pencil session, that it helped other people as well to draw, to sketch instead of trying to draft, which is more scientific and different. Now, if you hold a pen, it's a little bit more tricky. Sorry. To hold it like this, even though it would have been great. The reason why it's a little bit more tricky if you hold it like this is simply because the ink, of course, only flows from the very tip. And to hold it like this makes it very difficult because you're going to be constantly having to change your grip to be more on top of the pen. But when I sketch with a pen, I tend to take my grip further away from the tip so that I can loosen my hand up as much as I can. And this is a stance that a lot of artists use even with pencil, simply because it does force you to be looser when you draw. Bear in mind that unless you're doing something like a portrait study, nobody's going to afterwards look at what you drew. Which means to have it exact is not necessary. Even when you do a portrait study, is not only not necessary, but not advisable, because you've put nothing of yourself in there. If you study to learn, of course you're going to try and get a likeness as best as possible, but just remember that, all right? This is not going to lie next to the sketch at the end, or next to this little sketch at the end, right? It's not. So, all right, so let's start. I want to challenge you to hold your pen a little bit further back, and I want to challenge you to pick something that's a bit organic to sketch for today. When you go and find your own subject material, you can do something like a jar, but there isn't much to draw there except for shading, which is more complex than you might think. So let's start with something organic that you can play with a little bit, that's got texture to it, and varying texture, right? Now, if you're working with pen at the beginning and you are not too confident, you can take a pencil and first just create a basic outline. You can, and that is because of course you can't erase a pen. Now I'm going to make it a little bit bigger than life size so I can show you, and I'm going to play on the textured paper now so that you can see what happens. So you can do that if you're not too confident about it. So I'm going to make a nice big fat little stick here so that we can, but if you're feeling more confident, you can just start straight away, right? But I've started here with a pencil so that you can get an idea, so that you can make sure that it's right. Otherwise, start straight away with the pen. If you hold the pen like this on its side, what you can do is you can get a very fine gradation of a pen. You don't get only one line, such as if you write, right? It's one thickness that only varies when you lift the pen. If you hold it on its side, you get it's almost like a broken line. And I remember when somebody asked me about my Instagram post where I posted a little bit of a shot of me sketching and said, oh, it looks like the branches are sort of appearing by themselves. But that's because I hold the pen on its side and I allow the pen to live. That sounds a bit corny to say, but that is truly how it is. Now, please note, the one thing that you should try and refrain from as much as you can when you draw is do not outline. The line on the outside does not have to be a solid line throughout. But if you start with your pen on the side like this, what you get is you get the opportunity to go back and make darker what needs to be darker, and to leave light which doesn't need to be dark. And what I'm now doing is I am literally just letting the pen do the work. In other words, I am looking at the stick more than I'm looking at my page, by the way. And I am just feeling it. And I am looking at every little crevice. That is the beauty. Now, please have a look here. Because of the texture, you will see if I work there, for instance, which is not necessarily on the stick, but just to show you, the pen will go along the edge of the paper that I just created. That is beautiful. That is absolutely fantastic for a drawing, because it forces you to create a drawing that is you, and that isn't just an attempt at a rendering, right? And I'm keeping it light because I can go back and make it dark. The other thing is, how do you fill a space? Now, different artists do different things. One of the very classic ways is people do cross-hatching. Now, I'm going to show you a little bit here, because I don't typically do cross-hatching, but cross-hatching is when you go in one direction, right? And then you go in the other direction. It's classic. If you go look at the old masters, they drew like that, and you can do a whole sketch like that. There are artists that I follow on Instagram, and there are absolutely amazing artists who work like that. It's simply not how I work. You have to find your own way. If you find that cross-hatching works for you, absolutely go for it. The one beauty about cross-hatching is it forces you to not just work in one direction, which is what you absolutely should please try and avoid, because if you work in just one direction, the drawing starts looking forced. And I don't know, it becomes very unbalanced. I don't use cross-hatching, it's just not my way of working. I tend to have a random mark that I do. There are artists that I have seen working that have actually almost a sort of pattern they typically use. For me, it's wonderful to find a random mark that works under the specific circumstance, and then vary your mark depending on what you're drawing. And one of the artists who did that a lot was Van Gogh. If you go look at his pen drawings, he would vary his mark. I can actually try and get you one of those drawings to show you what I mean. He would vary his mark all the time. Now, he drew his own way as well. He didn't draw this way necessarily either. But while I'm talking, I'm hoping that you're seeing what I'm doing. I'm starting extremely lightly, and I'm getting the character of the stick, and I'm understanding the character of the stick. There are, for instance, there are some lines that go like this, sure, but there are also quite a few lines that go in this direction, and then there are, of course, the shady bits. And on this stick, some of them are shady bits and some of them are plain darker shades in the stick, and that's the fun to extract. And as you keep going, and I'm just going to do this little one, you will see that you're slowly but surely starting to almost mine the character of it out of the paper, and you're letting the paper reveal it to you, and doing it with something that is as textured is just absolutely fantastic, because it adds to the texture of the little stick, doesn't it now? There, for instance, is a little knob that's sticking out. Right? And this way you keep going. You put yourself a podcast in your ears. You forget about the worries of the day. And you just focus on this. This is meditation if you do it this way. What is meditation? It's focusing on one thing. Most forms of meditation, they focus on the body, right? There's nothing that says you can't focus on a little stick for a few hours and see what it teaches you. Now here, for instance, you can see very clearly how the texture in the paper is now impacting, because this is all dark there. And yet, because my pen is on its side, I am not making a uniform dark mark. But I can go back in and make darker the bits that are darker and leave light the bits that are light. Got it? All right, I think I want to, in fact, show you, if I can find it quickly enough. Yes, I can. Now, if I can find one of these drawings that I would like to find, which will be a little bit more towards the end of his life. Well, we can choose this one for all I care. Postman Rollin. You can see here how he used one type of mark on the jacket and one type of mark in the beard, right? He changed it, but notice how he didn't necessarily make the mark always go in the same direction. On the sleeve, it goes in one direction, it goes in the other direction as well. This man was a master. Look at this drawing and all the different marks he has for the light portions, the dark portions. And again, in case you're thinking, everybody starts out that way. Even the master, Vincent, did not start out that way. It's a very old book. That's not the same quality drawing as that. Even Vincent had to learn, okay? And he ended up, as you know, one of the great masters. I don't know whether I'll just quickly find, here. And look at this right at the end. Absolutely exquisite. Look at how they brought out the darkness in the trees. Absolutely fantastic, right? So don't be afraid to start somewhere. Everybody starts somewhere. All you need to do is keep going on whatever it is that speaks to you. And as I said, we will do a session where we talk about subject matter, because that's one of the questions I got in the feedback was, I sit with an empty page and I don't know what to draw. And I will help you find that. We will get there. But for now, if you're still lost, just go do a stick like I did. And see whether you are starting to feel more comfortable holding a pen this way instead of holding it pincer grip. And just starting to work on the little stick that you find, or a flower. Careful with flowers, they wilt. And let me know, ask me anything, and I can try and add that into the next session if you want to learn something else. But slowly we will go from something along these lines where you give a rendering of a little stick to something that speaks about your inside. And I showed you some of them. Here's another one, which I did the other day. Same thing. This is a complete mindscape. This is not from reality. But again, and as I said in a previous podcast, I have drawn a lot of trees in my life. So just keep going and you will get there. And in the end, we'll get you to also do an intuitive drawing of this kind. Does that make sense? Fantastic. Thank you for subscribing. I appreciate that a lot. There will be a button for you to subscribe. And see you around next time. Have a happy sketching day. Bye-bye.